Welcoming into Now with Stacy Washington, Stefan Padfield, Free Enterprise Project Director. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here because we love to hear about what's happening in the boardrooms of the major companies and corporations around the country as you guys go through and kind of help them to reorient themselves away from being woke. This time you're dealing with Starbucks. What's going on?
Right. So we filed a proposal there basically asking them to do an audit and a report of their various employee resource groups, is what they're generally called. They call them partnership groups. And basically, what the issue is, at least from our perspective, and I think from the perspective of a lot of others, is you're segregating employees on the basis of these superficial categories, race, gender, and you're not including everybody, right? So, sort of our first problem is that you're doing this at all, that you're segregating your employees, right? Neo segregation, neo racism, essentially in practice. And then if you're going to do it for everybody. But what we see is you don't have any groups that are for whites. You don't have any groups that are for straight
Why
males. You
does
don't have any groups
Starbucks
that are
serve more
for
than 10%
Christians
of
or
Thursday
Jews
morning
specifically.
after coffee
You do
chains
have a
lifted
group for
quarterly results that
sustainability, which
topped
goes to sort of even
expectations?
another
Buy its
layer of the
pumpkin
problem here,
spice
which is
latte.
that these
Starbucks
groups
also gave an
arguably
upbeat
are
profit
basically
forecast,
pushing just
banking on
more
its
wokeism,
updated
and then the managers are able to say, oh, we're just responding to our employees. So that's the bottom line. Is we asked the shareholders to vote on this proposal for Starbucks to look into these partnerships, these employee partnerships that essentially discriminate on the basis of race and sex.
So, just to be clear here, Stefan, you can't have an employee group at Starbucks for Christians. Like, if you wanted to do a Bible study at Starbucks, that would not be an employee group or an affinity group that they would permit.
Right. The closest thing they have right now is they have what they call an interfaith group, right? But they don't have anything that's specifically Christian and or Jewish, for example. And the problem with some of this is it really boils down, at least on some level, to this idea of yes, you can have an interfaith group and then find out that that group itself is very woke. But if you want to have a group that's right of center, right, that may be more focused on the actual text of the Bible, that you're going to have trouble finding. Now, I don't know if you were to push for something like that from within Starbucks, how they would respond. But the mere fact that they have an interfaith group doesn't mean that the right of center employees who are people of faith are having their needs met. And I think the other problem here is this is an allocation of resources by Starbucks, right? This is the use of shareholder dollars to essentially segregate employees on the basis of race and gender primarily, and then some of these other ancillary issues, right? Like I mentioned, sustainability. And what is being pushed here, I think, is certainly the concern is that this is just more white wokeism, more sort of neo-Marxist, neo-racist agenda that's being covered in sort of a cloth of bottom up, but is really just more agenda driven focus from the company itself.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you talk about the interfaith groups because all of my experiences with people who are in interfaith groups, it's normally it has a Islamic bent or so it's a Eastern religious type of bent. It's something that's definitely the opposite of Christianity or Judaism. And the other members of the interfaith kind of coalition, all of them are there to make their religious beliefs fit in better with the other side as opposed to an interfaith group that has equal parts Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and they all come together to talk about the things that are the same. I've never seen it represented that way. It's always one in which the Christians who are a member of the interfaith group are actually kind of saying, these are the bad things about Christianity, these are the bad things about Judaism, and then the third religion, whatever that is the one that kind of rules over the group, the content, and even what the members are allowed to share. So I agree with you. I don't know that they have a lot of their people who work there who would actually say, "I want to have Bible study at work at Starbucks," but I don't feel like it would be welcome if they did. And that's just based on the kind of signs you see at Starbucks. I never see any signs about things that are I would call normative culture here in America. The signs are usually having to do with LGBTQ or affinity groups that have to do with sexual orientation, and especially now trans. Those are the signs that you see at Black Lives Matter, Antifa. Those are the signs that you see on Starbucks in their windows. You don't see signs about Bible studies or faith groups or even youth groups meeting there. So it is an interesting perspective for them to take. in relation to what you're bringing up.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all to hear that. And it's one of the things that we have to constantly, certainly from the right of center, and I would say even mainstream America, have to pay attention to is the way that language gets abused, right? So if you have concerns about whether more traditional Christians are represented, and they say, well, we have this interfaith group, they think they're done, right? But we really need to look under the hood and see what's going on. And again, it doesn't surprise me at all the experience that you're recounting of what you found when you've gone to these sorts of meetings. And I think it's just fascinating on a number of levels, right? Because to the extent Starbucks is saying, hey, we're doing all of this because it's somehow going to trickle down to shareholder value, right? That these groups are going to give us ideas and that'll help us in marketing. I mean, are you basically saying that you're just ignoring half the country, right? And if you are, if that is your goal, that you're only going to market to half the country, then you should just come out and say that, right? I think the market would be very interested, the broader market, the analysts and so forth, to hear that, because it seems like when you go through the list of these groups and you see who's excluded, on some level, it's as if Starbucks is saying, we just don't care about those perspectives and we're not interested in marketing to those views.
Yeah, and I think, Stefan, there's also their customer base. So while they do have a huge customer base, right? Starbucks touches every neighborhood, every community, and they're international. They're especially prominent in airports where if you want a good cup of coffee and you just want coffee, your choice is to go to Starbucks. The other stores that are there, unless there's a Dunkin', you're not going to find just a straight coffee shop at the airport. So that means you're using it. And so they have a wide swath of the American populace using their service, but they focus on kind of what they consider to be marginalized groups using the money of that customer base. Tell everybody where to find out more about Free Enterprise Project and the good work that you guys do.
Sure. So the Free Enterprise Project, we're under the umbrella of the National Center for Public Policy Research. So you can just go to nationalcenter.org. You can certainly look me up personally. I'm on X at Stefan Padfield, at Stefan Padfield on X, and certainly try to distribute a lot of the stuff that we're doing. But nationalcenter.org is the place to go.
It is, and it's a great organization. I used to be a co-chair over there and I loved it, and I still love being a member of Project 21. Thank you so much, Stefan Padfield, for joining me on the show today from Free Enterprise Project.